international businesses, a lot of times you break things up into what we call SBUs or strategic business units. And a business unit could sit down and be this big an organization, and it just depends as to how many of them you have as you go through. Sometimes when you approach countries like China, you're dealing with not just China. China is massively big from a geographical perspective, but it's also culturally big as well. Multiple languages across the entire country, multiple different kinds of cultures. And so that means you have multiple different kinds of markets, and people that sit down, they have almost no income. Some people have high income levels as you go through. You have an emerging middle class. There's so many factors there. You may have to have multiple SBUs to appeal to different segments of just one population in one country as you go through, let alone having an international strategy for all your SBUs. So it depends what you're focusing on as to what's going to be the impact on that SBU. Also, you may want to sit down and have the SBU act like a virtual corporation on its own by having different things farmed out as you go through. Maybe accounting is done by corporate office. Maybe engineering, though, is done by a firm in part of the country that it's already in. Or maybe the engineering is part of your product development over here at headquarters, and you have a lot of it coming through the product, but the marketing being toned with people in the actual demographic of that people or that geographic area as you go through. So it depends what the SBU is doing. Usually we try to consider them as a self-contained business entity that has its own defined market, its own specific competitors, and carry out its business mission for the intent of what is in the best interest for the SBU to perform according to the standards of the world corporation as a whole. That pretty much is, here you are, you have this market, this is your job, and here's the goals you're supposed to achieve, boom, go do it, and let them operate on their own as you go through. Sometimes you take the actual current organizational trends where you sit down and you redesign the structure, hierarchy, business systems. Sometimes it's dependent upon the SBU leader, whoever or how that may be, or that leadership team. But a lot of times that virtual corporation, you'll have a core in the SBU and you'll farm out different components, human resources over here, engineering here, marketing over here, manufacturing over here. Sometimes you'll do that and you'll farm them out either to entities within the SBU geographic area or the headquarters as they go through, or maybe an SBU and another thing that's related to that, or geographically close enough that you can actually have physical communications if that need ever arose as you go through. So it depends how you're set up as you go through. A lot of times you have horizontal corporations, they make lateral decision processes. By lateral, it's across corporations as you go through with horizontal networks and a lot of corporate-wide business philosophy. You'll see a lot of times that the larger and the longer term international corporations, they rely more and more on the headquarters directed philosophy because there's too much churn in the actual geographical SBUs as they go through. Subsidiaries and affiliates as you go through. A subsidiary is controlled by other companies, parent companies, through ownership with enough voting stock to elect really the people in that organization as you go through. By a subsidiary, really it's focused in as an SBU for that region, but it's controlled by a larger organization. You'll see this happen with a lot of different mergers that go on nonstop throughout the entire business world. Affiliates are companies controlled by other companies, but less than majority owners as you go through. A lot of it is changing with stock ownership and those involving non-ownership mechanisms as well. So you'll have subsidiaries and also people that are partners, affiliates as you go through, where you have like units or like plans for that market as you go through, but the control isn't there and the full ownership isn't there. It's just there's enough ownership within the affiliate to sit down there and guide it as you go through the process. A lot of times you want to have standardization of the products and equipment. You want to have using the workforce because sometimes you'll take advantage of a low-cost workforce as you go in and make certain your process, the production process, stabilizes and adapts as necessary to deal with that specific business unit's operations as you go through. You'll see over here, you'll see that the aspect of the bottles all look exactly the same shape. That's probably because they are exactly the same shape, made in different colors and different labels with different internal products, but it's all very similar. So you'll see standardization taking that whole aspect of it. You also have that standardization, maybe part of the brand look that you want to have as you go through. But it just depends, because sometimes even the color can be offensive as you go through. In Vietnam, you have to be careful about having the old Republic of Vietnam colors as you go through versus the new. And if you, this depends on the market geographic determinations that you're looking at in the process as to who you're trying to sell the product to as you go through. So this depends when you go through looking on the products that you have standardization, but making sure you're standardizing that it's going to fit within that geographic SBU's area as you go through. So subsidiary management and headquarters reliance on it, you're going to see a lot of the parent operations on the older organizations. They rely really on the host country to operate, but the headquarters often really sits down. The older ones, they focus more on the strengths at the headquarters than they do in the region. But you'll also see that whole change they talked about before, about the aspect of an organizational wave happening where decentralization, centralization, you'll see that wave acting in the organization over a period of time. Typically, the cycle is 7 to 10 years. But that being said, you'll see this whole wave happening depending upon who is in charge as you go through. So SBUs, they're often self-contained. A lot of times they bounce between centralization, decentralization as you go through. Where decisions are based is a crucial decision, and it really could play a big impact as to what that SBU is doing. Are you going to be following the overall corporate strategy, or is corporate strategy going to allow you to have the autonomy to sit down there and do what's best for you, provided you sit down and meet the profit parameters put upon you by the overall corporation? And then pay attention to the aspect of corporate subsidiaries or the affiliates as to who and what they are and what control you have and how much influence you have or need to make sure you're successful as an SBU. Take care.